Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. I'm coming to you again from Aoyama Park next to Tokyo National Arts Center, where it's a beautiful late summer afternoon. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock on Saturday and quite a nice day here. My friends the cicadas are still supplying the background music. Their friends the crows were here a little bit earlier, adding their noise. The positive thing about the crows being here is the cicadas tend to shut up while they're around. But luckily the crows left, and cicadas are not, or cicadas, however you prefer to pronounce the word. They're a little bit less noisy than they were earlier, and a lot less noisy than they have been for the last month. A big difference with today's video is that I'm trying out some new gear today. I've been using Canon G7X Mark II since I started this channel back in July of 2019. Today I'm using an old camera which I dug out of my closet, an old Nikon D800, and attached to it is a rather inexpensive Rode compact microphone. Though I really like my G7X Mark II, I like the flip-up LCD, which allows me to work in front of the camera and see what I'm doing. I like the image stabilization and video quality. What I don't like is the built-in microphone, which, though it works really well when I'm shooting indoors or in a place where there isn't a lot of background noise, if I happen to be outside on a day like today where there is some wind and background noise, it just picks up everything and the audio is terrible. I'm not sure how the audio is working out right now. I'll find that out when I start editing the video later on, but hopefully it's not so bad. The subject of today's video is a really interesting camera, and one which I don't come across so often, at least in good condition, and that is the Minolta Minoltina rangefinder camera. The Minoltina series was introduced in the early 1960s with the Minolta Minoltina P in 1963, which was a compact rangefinder camera with a 40mm f1.8 lens. A year later, the Minoltina S was introduced, which was the identical camera but with a 40mm f1.8 lens, so a faster lens option. The Minoltina cameras are quite wonderful little machines. Very high quality, very wonderful fit and finish, and quite stylish design, at least I think so. They were kind of an evolution of the AL and Unimat cameras, which were developed in the 1950s, but more modern and much improved over the earlier cameras, besides being a lot lighter and easier to handle. There were two versions of these cameras available, the silver version and the black version. The black version seems to be like an anodized finish, whereas the chrome version is just chrome-plated brass. Normally I prefer black paint cameras, and when I go shopping for a camera which I prefer to use for myself, I usually get a black one. But in the case of the Minoltinas, I think the silver looks better. As you can tell, it's quite attractive, and the black rings around the lens, the shutter speed ring, the filter ring, the leatherette and such, the windows and such, I think the black and silver looks quite good on this camera. The 40mm lens is also a very good performer, whether you have the f2.0 or f1.9 versions or f1.8 versions. The 40mm lens came into vogue in the 1960s. There were some people who wanted a camera with a standard lens, the 50mm lens, or a wide-angle lens, which was the 35mm lens. And then there was a large market of people who wanted the best of both worlds. They thought that the 50mm wasn't wide enough and the 35mm was too wide. So camera manufacturers responded by manufacturing cameras with 40mm lenses and 40mm lenses for other rangefinder cameras and SLR cameras. Minolta's 40mm lenses were quite excellent performers, and you'll find them on the Leica copy cameras, like the the CL cameras that accept the Leica M mount lenses. The Minoltina cameras were made in fairly small numbers, and I don't come across very many good examples here, and the ones I do find tend to sell for a bit of money. This is the second Minoltina camera I had. About 5 or 6 years ago I bought a Minoltina P, planning to take it out and shoot with it. I found it on a classified site here in Japan, and I bought it, and when it arrived I found I couldn't use it. It was just junk. Whoever had owned it before me had lived near the sea, and the salt air had gotten inside of it and corroded everything. Although the outside looked somewhat okay, the inside was just terrible. So I held on to it for a few years, thinking that I would get another one and I could perhaps use that one for parts because the lens was nice and the top and bottom covers were nice, but I never found another one. So I eventually just tossed it in the bin. And then a couple of weeks ago I saw this thing come up on the same classified site for half what I paid for the non-working Minoltina P. So I thought, oh, what the hell, I'll go ahead and try it. Maybe the second time I'll get a working camera. And when it arrived, I was quite pleased. This is actually quite a beautiful camera, far better than I expected, considering what I paid for it. I had got this camera to go ahead to go out and shoot with and use for a few months, but as I was cleaning out my room the other day, when I dug out my D800, I just realized I've just got too much stuff. So I decided to go ahead and sell this one. So if anyone's interested, you'll find it listed on my Etsy store. I'll go ahead and describe the features and functions, how to use and how to load film into the Minoltina P. Starting at the top here, we have the film rewind lever, and the tab folds out to make it a little bit easier to rewind. Here we have the flash shoe, and the flash sync socket is located on the front bottom of the camera. If you're going to mount a flash gun to one of these cameras, I recommend you run the cable behind the camera and plug it in rather than in front, because you risk the cable finding its way in front of the lens. And I've had that happen before, and it's with a film camera you can't really tell what you're doing until you develop the film, and that's usually a little bit long in the future. So to play it safe, just always check in front of the lens to make sure that nothing is obscuring it. Next to that we have the window over the light meter. It's a very simple system, a match needle system. Next to that we have the shutter button, which accepts a standard cable release, and over here we have the film counter window. On the back of the camera we have a very nice low profile film winding and shutter charging lever located on the back instead of on the top. And we have the viewfinder window here. It's a little bit small, but compared to other cameras of the day, the viewfinder is actually quite large and bright, and the rangefinder patch has really good contrast. Being this is a fixed lens rangefinder camera, the important stuff is located around the lens. At the base here, we have a focusing tab attached to the focusing ring, and we have a focus scale here on the side, which goes in feet or meters. In front of that, we have a selector switch for the X-Sync self-timer and manual settings. In front of that, we have the aperture ring, and then of course we have the shutter speed ring. And this camera is nice, and it offers a full range of shutter speeds from bulb and 1 second all the way up to 1/500th of a second, which is quite handy when you have a fast lens. Up here we have the light diffuser for a selenium light meter cell. Since this has a selenium light meter cell, it doesn't require a battery. The light meter is powered by the light. Here we have the rangefinder window, and here we have the viewfinder window. On the bottom of the camera we don't have very much. We have a cutout, which allows you to more easily insert the film cartridges. We have a standard 3/8" tripod socket, and here we have the release button, which you use to press to unlock the winding mechanism and rewind the film. On occasion, people send me cameras to fix, or I bought cameras which people say are not working. And I find that the reason these cameras are not working is because they have film loaded in them, which has been wound all the way to the end. So the shutter no longer charges, and nothing works. So if you've come across an old camera which is jammed and doesn't work, it could be that it has film loaded in it. I get one of these cameras almost every week. That's how common this problem is. Loading the film in one of these cameras is quite easy. We have a latch here on the left side of the camera. Lift that up and the film drawer pops open. To load the film, you drop your film cartridge here on the left side, stretch the film leader over the take-up spool and feed it in to the slot here, and turn the spool with your thumb or finger. There are teeth here on the bottom to allow it to be easily turned, and keep turning until the film runs over the sprockets here on the first take-up spool, and make sure that the teeth on the sprockets engage the holes on the film. For people who are new to shooting film, this is sometimes a problem, and I'm more than I'm decades past being a beginner, but this is something I still manage to screw up on occasion. Once you have the film fed in properly, close the door and wind the film and press the shutter until the number 1 shows up in the film counter. Operating the camera is quite simple. It has a coupled light meter. So what you would do is you adjust the shutter speed and aperture speed, and as you turn these, it causes this green needle in the light meter window to move one way or the other. What you want to do is you want to turn these until the needle lines up with the gold or silver, whichever version of the camera you have, line in the middle. When the line is straight across, you have the exposure properly set and you can go ahead and take your photograph. These are quite amazing cameras. I love how they feel in the hand. I love how smooth everything is. It's just a very smooth and wonderful camera despite its age and I guess the state of mechanical technology back at the time. I would love to go out and shoot with this camera, but as I said, I've got just too many of these things. So this will be going up for sale, or it's already listed for sale in my Etsy store. I'll be listing a lot more cameras over the next week in my Etsy and eBay stores. If you'd like to see what cameras I have available, I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video. I plan to make more videos in the future about vintage Japanese cameras and photography in Japan and a few other things. If you're interested in seeing these videos, please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.